Alex Carter stood in the middle of a training facility that looked like something from a science fiction movie. The walls were covered with screens showing star maps, alien languages, and physics equations he was only beginning to understand. It had been 2 weeks since he agreed to become Earth's first interstellar ambassador, and his life had changed completely. "Good morning, Alex," said Dr. Susan Blake as she entered the room carrying a stack of files. "Ready for another day of learning how to talk to aliens?" Alex nodded, though he wasn't sure anyone could really be ready for something like this. The crash course in xenodiplomacy was unlike anything any human had ever attempted. Every day brought new challenges and information that made his head spin. "Today we're going to focus on alien psychology," Dr. Blake continued, setting down her files. "Remember, we don't know much about how these beings think, but we can make educated guesses based on their message." Alex had been studying the Andromedan communication for hours every day. Each time he read it, he discovered new details. The aliens seemed to value cooperation over competition, and they appeared to have eliminated war and poverty from their society centuries ago. But there were hints of something else in their words, something that made Alex uneasy. "Dr. Blake," Alex said, "there's something in the message that I keep thinking about. The way they talk about watching Earth for centuries. Why didn't they contact us sooner?" Dr. Blake paused, her expression growing serious. "That's a very good question, Alex, and it's one we need to be prepared to ask them directly." The training continued with lessons in advanced physics. Alex learned about faster than light, travel, quantum communication, and energy sources that could power entire planets. His brain felt like it was stretching to accommodate all the new information, but the hardest part wasn't the science. It was the physical conditioning. Alex had never been particularly athletic, preferring books to basketball. Now he found himself running on treadmills, lifting weights, and learning basic self-defense from Commander Pete Torres, a tough military advisor who had volunteered for the mission. "The journey through space is going to be hard on your body," Commander Torres explained as Alex struggled through another set of push-ups. "We don't know what kind of environment you'll face on the alien station. You need to be ready for anything." Alex's arms shook as he lowered himself to the ground. "How do you prepare for meeting beings that might be completely different from humans?" "You stay flexible, stay alert, and trust your instincts," Torres replied. "But mostly, you remember that you're representing all of humanity. That's a big responsibility, but it's also a source of strength." The ship that would carry Alex to Andromeda was called the Horizon. It was humanity's most advanced spacecraft, built in secret over the past month using plans that combined human engineering with hints from the alien message. Alex toured the ship with Captain Ryan Walsh, an experienced pilot who would command the small crew. "She's not much to look at," Captain Walsh said as they walked through the narrow corridors. "But she's designed for one purpose, getting you to that alien station safely." The ship was indeed small, with just enough room for a crew of 5. Besides Alex, Captain Walsh, and Commander Torres, there would be Dr. Laura Kim, a xenobiologist who would study any new life forms they encountered, and Engineer Maya Brooks, who would keep the ship running during the long journey. Alex met Dr. Kim in the ship's tiny laboratory. She was an energetic woman in her 30s who seemed genuinely excited about the possibility of meeting alien life. "I've been dreaming about this moment since I was a little girl," she told Alex as she showed him her scientific equipment. "2. Think that we'll actually meet beings from another galaxy. It's incredible. Are you nervous?" Alex asked. "Terrified," Dr. Kim admitted with a laugh. "But that's what makes it exciting. We're about to make history." Engineer Maya Brooks was different from the others. She was quiet and practical, more interested in making sure the ship worked than in talking about the philosophical implications of first contact. But Alex found her presence comforting. She had a way of making even the most complex problems seem manageable. "The quantum tunnel drive is still experimental," she explained to Alex one day as they stood in the engine room. "We've only tested it on unmanned probes. But the alien message contained enough information to make it work for longer distances. What happens if it doesn't work? Alex asked. Maya shrugged. Then we'll be stuck between galaxies with no way home. But let's not think about that. As the departure date approached, Alex's training intensified. He practiced alien languages, studied diplomatic protocols, and memorized everything humanity knew about the Andromedan collective. But no amount of preparation could ease the growing sense that he was missing something important. The breakthrough came during a late-night study session. Alex was reviewing the alien message for the 100th time when he noticed a pattern he had missed before. Hidden in the mathematical sections were references to something called the test of worthiness. Alex immediately called Dr. Blake, even though it was past midnight. "Dr. Blake, I found something," he said when she answered her phone. "The aliens mentioned a test. They're not just inviting us to join them. They're evaluating us." There was silence. On the other end of the line, then Dr. Blake sighed. "We suspected as much. A civilization that's been watching Earth for centuries wouldn't make contact without having some kind of plan. What kind of test do you think it is?" "I don't know, Alex, but I have a feeling you're going to find out." The night before departure, Alex's parents came to the facility to say goodbye. They had been remarkably supportive throughout the training process, but Alex could see the worry in their eyes. "I'm proud of you, son," his father said, hugging him tightly. "But I'm also scared. You're going further from home than any human has ever gone." "I'll be careful, Dad, and I'll come back. I promise." His mother held him for a long time without saying anything. Finally, she whispered, "Remember that no matter what happens out there, you're still our little boy. Don't let them change who you are." "I won't, Mom." Launch day arrived with surprising little fanfare. The departure was kept secret from the media to avoid panic and interference. Alex boarded the horizon with his small crew, carrying nothing but a few personal items and the weight of humanity's hopes. "All systems ready, Captain," reported Engineer Brooks from her station. "Quantum tunnel drive online," added Dr. Kim, who was monitoring the alien technology. Captain Walsh looked at Alex, who was strapped into a seat near the front of the ship. "Last chance to change your mind, Ambassador." Alex shook his head. "I'm ready. Then let's make history. Engage in quantum tunnel drive in 3.2.1. The ship lurched forward, and Alex felt a strange sensation, as if he was being stretched and compressed at the same time. Outside the windows, the stars began to blur into long streams of light. They were no longer in normal space but traveling through a kind of shortcut between galaxies. "Journey time to Andromeda, 3 weeks," announced Captain Walsh. "Welcome to the first interstellar voyage in human history." Alex looked out at the swirling colors of the quantum tunnel and felt a mixture of excitement and fear. Somewhere ahead of them, alien beings were waiting to meet humanity's representative. They would judge not just Alex, but all of humanity based on this encounter. During the journey, Alex grew closer to his crew. Commander Torres taught him card games and shared stories of his military service. Dr. Kim showed him how to use the scientific equipment and talked about her theories on alien biology. Engineer Brooks taught him basic ship maintenance and told him about her childhood dreams of exploring space. "You know," Maya said one evening as they sat in the ship's small common area, "when I was your age, I thought I'd be lucky to see humans land on Mars. Now here we are, traveling to another galaxy. Do you think we're ready for this?" Alex asked. "I don't think anyone could be ready for something like this," Maya replied. "But that's what makes humans special. We do impossible things because we're too stubborn to admit they're impossible." Captain Walsh joined them, looking tired but pleased. "We're making good time. Should reach the Andromedan station in 5 days. Alex felt his stomach tighten. 5 days until he would meet beings from another galaxy. 5 days until he would discover what kind of test the aliens had planned for humanity. "Captain," Alex said, "what do you think they want from us?" Walsh considered the question carefully. I think they want to know if we're ready to join something bigger than ourselves. The question is, are we? Alex looked out at the swirling colors of the quantum tunnel. In 5 days, he would find out. The ship continued its journey through the space between galaxies, carrying humanity's youngest ambassador toward a meeting that would determine the future of Earth. Alex tried to sleep, but his mind kept racing with questions. What would the aliens look like? What would they want to know about humanity? And most importantly, what would happen if he failed the test? Outside the ship, the quantum tunnel pulsed with energy, pulling them ever closer to their destination. Alex closed his eyes and tried to imagine what awaited them in the Andromeda galaxy. Whatever it was, he would face it with the courage and curiosity that had gotten him this far. The adventure was just beginning. Alex Carter adjusted his thick glasses and stared at the complex equation on his laptop screen. The global science fair was in full swing around him, with students from every continent showing off their projects. But Alex wasn't thinking about his own presentation on quantum mechanics. He was completely focused on something much more important. 3 months ago, radio telescopes around the world had picked up a strange signal from space. It came from the direction of the Andromeda galaxy, over 2 million light years away. The signal was clearly artificial, made by intelligent beings. It was humanity's first contact with alien life. The message was unlike anything scientists had ever seen. It contained mathematical formulas, strange symbols, and patterns that seemed to repeat but never quite made sense. The world's best linguists, mathematicians, and computer scientists have been working day and night to decode it. So far, they have made little progress. Alex had been following the story on the news like everyone else. But unlike most 16-year-olds, he had downloaded the raw data from the internet and started working on it himself. He treated it like a giant puzzle, the kind he had loved solving since he was little. "Hey, Alex, you coming to lunch?" called his friend Danny from across the science fair hall. Danny was showing off a robot he had built that could play chess. "In a minute," Alex replied, not looking up from his screen. He had been working on this particular section of the alien message for hours. There was something about the way the symbols grouped together that reminded him of fractals in math class. Alex's fingers flew across the keyboard as he tried a new approach. What if the message wasn't linear? What if it was meant to be read in layers, like looking at a 3D picture? He started rearranging the symbols in his mind, building them up like blocks. Suddenly, something clicked. The pattern wasn't just mathematical. It was also musical. Alex hummed softly as he worked, and the rhythm matched the spacing of the symbols. He grabbed his headphones and plugged them in, converting the pattern into sound waves. The melody was beautiful and alien, unlike anything he had ever heard. But more importantly, it made sense. The music was carrying information, hiding meaning in its rhythm and tone. Alex's heart raced as he realized he might be onto something big. He worked through the lunch break, forgetting about food entirely. Other students walked by his table, but Alex barely noticed them. His whole world had shrunk down to the glowing screen in front of him and the strange alien music playing in his headphones. By evening, Alex had made a breakthrough. The message wasn't just one communication. It was dozens of them, all layered together like voices in a choir. Each layer told part of a larger story. Alex separated them one by one, his excitement growing with each discovery. The first layer was a greeting. The aliens called themselves the Andromedan Collective, and they spoke for 47 different species spread across multiple galaxies. They had been watching Earth for a long time, and they were impressed by humanity's rapid development. The second layer was more interesting. It contained detailed information about faster-than-light travel, energy production, and medical technology that was centuries ahead of anything on Earth. Alex's hand shook as he read. Descriptions of machines that could heal any disease, and ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks. But the third layer was the most shocking of all. It was an invitation. The Andromedans wanted to meet humanity face to face. They were willing to share their technology and knowledge, but only under certain conditions. They wanted Earth to send the representative to their great station in the Andromeda galaxy. This person would speak for all of humanity and help decide Earth's place in the galactic community. Alex read the requirements for this representative over and over again, hardly believing what he was seeing. The person had to be young, preferably under 20 years old. The aliens believed that wisdom came from fresh perspectives, not from years of experience. They wanted someone who could think in new ways and wasn't trapped by old habits. Alex saved his work and leaned back in his chair. His mind was spinning with possibilities. He had just decoded the most important message in human history, and he was pretty sure he was the only person who had figured it out. The next morning, Alex's science teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, found him asleep at his table. His laptop was still open, showing pages of alien symbols and mathematical equations. "Alex, what is all this?" she asked, gently shaking him awake. Alex rubbed his eyes and looked around. The science fair was over, and most of the other students had already packed up their projects. "I think I solved it," he said quietly. "Solved what?" "The alien message. The one from Andromeda." Mrs. Rodriguez looked at Alex's screen and frowned. She had heard about the mysterious signal, of course. The whole world had been talking about it. But she had no idea that Alex had been working on it. "Alex, are you sure about this?" "The world's top scientists haven't been able to decode that message." Alex nodded and started explaining his discovery. He showed her how the symbols formed patterns, how the music carried information, and how the layers worked together to create meaning. Mrs. Rodriguez listened with growing amazement. "We need to contact the authorities," she said finally. "This is much bigger than a science fair project." Within hours, Alex found himself in a government facility, surrounded by men and women in suits who looked very serious. Dr. Susan Blake, the head of the newly formed Interstellar Relations Department, sat across from him at a metal table. "Alex, I need you to explain exactly how you decoded this message," she said. Her voice was kind but firm. Alex went through his process step by step. He showed them his work, played the alien music, and demonstrated how the layers of meaning fit together. The adults in the room exchanged glances that Alex couldn't interpret. "Young man," said Dr. Blake, "if you're right about this, you may have just changed the course of human history." Over the next few days, teams of experts verified Alex's work. They tested his theories, checked his math, and analyzed his conclusions. Everything held up. The message was real, the invitation was genuine, and the technology being offered was beyond anything humanity had imagined. But there was one problem. The aliens had been very specific about their requirements. They wanted a young representative, someone who could think creatively and adapt quickly. They wanted someone who wasn't limited by preconceived notions about how the universe worked. Alex's parents, Lisa and Greg Carter, sat in Dr. Blake's office 3 days later. They looked tired and worried. "You're telling us that our 16-year-old son is the best candidate to represent all of humanity?" Greg asked. "I'm telling you that he's the only person who was able to decode their message," Dr. Blake replied. "And according to their requirements, his age makes him perfect for the job." Lisa Carter shook her head. "He's just a kid. He should be worried about homework and basketball games, not intergalactic diplomacy." "Mom, I want to do this," Alex said. Quietly, he had been thinking about it for days, and his mind was made up. "This is the most important thing that's ever happened to humanity. I can't just walk away from it." Dr. Blake leaned forward. "Alex, I want you to understand what you're agreeing to. You will be traveling to another galaxy, meeting alien beings that we know nothing about. You will be representing not just yourself, but every human who has ever lived." "The responsibility is enormous," Alex nodded. "I know, but isn't that what humans do? We explore new places, meet new people, and try to understand the universe. This is just the next step." His parents looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations that only married couples can have. Finally, Lisa sighed. "If this is what you really want, Alex, then we'll support you. But promise us you'll be careful." "I promise," Alex said. Though he had no idea what he was promising to be careful about, Dr. Blake smiled for the first time since the meeting began. "Well then, Mr. Carter, it looks like you're going to be Earth's first interstellar ambassador. I hope you're ready for the adventure of a lifetime." Alex grinned back at her. "I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it until now." Captain Alex Thompson stood on the bridge of his ship, the Steadfast, watching the massive Federation fleet prepare for what everyone knew would be the most important battle in galactic history. The Skarn Empire had pushed deep into Federation space, and this was their last chance to stop them before they reached the core worlds. Alex was a calm man in his 30s who had commanded merchant ships before the war. Now he found himself leading a mixed squadron of human and alien vessels, something that would have been impossible just months before. His ship was small compared to the Chronari battleships around him, but it carried something the larger vessels lacked: experience in real combat. "Captain, we're receiving final deployment orders from Admiral Korvath," reported Lieutenant Susan Walsh, his communications officer. Susan was young but smart, and she had adapted quickly to working with alien technology. "Put it on the main screen," Alex ordered. The holographic display showed the Kepler station system, where the Federation had chosen to make their stand. It was a strategic location with asteroid fields, gas clouds, and multiple moons that could provide cover. Unlike their previous battles, this time the Federation was planning to use the terrain to their advantage. "All ships, this is Admiral Korvath," came the voice of the Chronari commander. "We will not repeat the mistakes of our previous encounters. Human tactical advisors have helped us prepare new strategies. Today, we fight not with honor alone, but with intelligence." Alex smiled at the change in the Admiral's tone. 3 months ago, Korvath had dismissed human ideas completely. Now he was broadcasting them to the entire fleet. "Captain Thompson," the Admiral continued, "you will lead Strike Group Charlie. Your mission is to use the asteroid field as cover and harass the enemy flanks. Do not engage in direct combat unless absolutely necessary." "Understood, Admiral," Alex replied. His strike group consisted of 12 human ships and 24 Federation vessels that had been modified with human stealth technology. It was a small force, but it was designed for mobility and surprise. Meanwhile, on the flagship of the Skarn fleet, Commander Zeth was reviewing intelligence reports about the Federation's new tactics. The massive warrior had been confident of easy victory, but recent encounters had shown that the Federation was changing its methods. "General, our scouts report unusual activity in the Federation fleet," reported his aide, a younger Skarn named Crix. "Their ship formations are different from previous battles." Zeth studied the tactical displays. "Different how?" "They're spreading out instead of massing together. Some ships are taking positions in the asteroid fields. Others are hiding behind the gas giant's moons." "Impossible," Zeth growled. "The Federation always fights the same way. This must be some kind of trick." "Perhaps, General," Crick said carefully, "but our previous victories were based on their predictable tactics. If they're adapting ... they're still weak," Zeth interrupted. "Size and strength will triumph, as they always have. Order the fleet to advance. We'll crush them with overwhelming force." The Skarn fleet moved into the Kepler system exactly as they had in every previous battle. They formed a massive wedge formation designed to punch through Federation defenses. With raw power, it was an impressive sight, over 200 warships moving in perfect coordination. But this time, the Federation wasn't there to meet them. "Where are they?" Zeth demanded, as his sensors showed empty space where the Federation fleet should have been waiting. Detecting multiple contacts throughout the system, his sensor operator reported, "Small groups of ships are scattered among the asteroids, gas clouds, and moon shadows." For the first time since the war began, Zeth felt uncertain. This wasn't how galactic warfare worked. Enemies were supposed to meet in open space, line up their forces, and fight until one side surrendered. There, Afraid to face us directly, he finally decided, order all ships to sweep the asteroid fields. We'll hunt them down one group at a time. It was exactly what Alex Thompson had been hoping for. As the Skarn fleet split up to search for scattered Federation forces, they exposed themselves to the kind of attack they had never experienced before. All units, this is Thompson, Alex broadcast to his strike group. Target the Skarn search groups. Hit hard, hit fast, then disappear back into the asteroids. The first attack came from 3 directions at once. Human ships, invisible to Skarn sensors thanks to new stealth technology, struck a search group. From behind, before the Skarn could react, the attackers had vanished back into the asteroid field. What happened? Zeth demanded as reports of the attack reached his flagship. Unknown, General, came the confused reply. The enemy ships appeared. From nowhere, fired, and disappeared. Our sensors couldn't track them. More attacks followed. Small Federation groups would appear, strike hard at isolated Skarn vessels, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The Skarn, trained for direct combat, found themselves fighting shadows. This is not warfare, Zeth roared. This is cowardice. But Commander Rick Davis, leading a boarding party aboard a captured Skarn destroyer, had a different perspective. Rick was a former Marine who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of the war, capturing an enemy ship from the inside. Cowardice? Rick said to his team as they moved through the Skarn vessel's corridors. Tell that to the crew of this ship. Rick's boarding party had used an old human tactic. They had hidden inside a fake debris field, allowing themselves to be captured along with what appeared to be wreckage from a destroyed Federation ship. Once inside the Skarn vessel's cargo bay, they had emerged and begun systematically taking control of the ship. The Skarn crew, trained for ship-to-ship combat, had no idea how to fight enemies who were already inside their vessel. They tried to use their size and strength, but the humans used the ship's own structure against them, fighting in narrow corridors where the Skarn's bulk was a disadvantage rather than an asset. Engineering secured, reported Sergeant Lisa Brown over the com. Their power systems are offline. Bridge taken, added Corporal Tim Carter. The command crew has surrendered. Rick smiled as he looked at the captured Skarn officers. These warriors, who had terrorized the galaxy with their strength and aggression, looked completely bewildered. They couldn't understand how tiny humans had taken their ship without a single major battle. Tell your fleet commander, Rick said, to the Skarn captain, that humans don't fight fair. We fight to win. The message was broadcast on all frequencies, and the psychological effect on the Skarn fleet was immediate. For the first time in their military history, they realized they were facing an enemy that didn't care about size, strength, or traditional honor. They were fighting beings who would use any method necessary to achieve victory. General, one of Zeph's subordinates said quietly, perhaps we should withdraw and reconsider our strategy. Never, Zeth shouted. We are Skarn. We do not retreat from tiny weaklings. But the tide of battle was already turning. Admiral Korvath, coordinating the Federation response from his command ship, watched as human tactics confused and demoralized. The enemy fleet. Captain Thompson, the Admiral called. The enemy is beginning to group their forces together for protection. What do you recommend? Now we hit them with everything we have, Alex replied. When they cluster together, they can't maneuver. They become sitting targets. The final phase of the battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of two fleets meeting in glorious combat, it became a systematic destruction of confused and disorganized enemy forces. Human-led strike groups coordinated attacks from multiple directions, while alien ships that had learned human tactics provided support from unexpected angles. The Skarn, masters of direct combat, found themselves completely outmaneuvered by an enemy they couldn't understand. Their powerful weapons were useless against foes they couldn't target. Their overwhelming strength meant nothing against tactics they had never imagined. General, we've lost 60% of our fleet, Crix reported, his voice filled with shock. The remaining ships are requesting permission to withdraw. Zeth stared at the tactical display, watching his supposedly invincible fleet being torn apart by tactics that made no sense to him. How? He whispered. How are they doing this? The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the captured Skarn officers being held aboard Rick Davis's captured destroyer provided intelligence that changed everything. You don't understand, the prisoner told his human captors. We've never lost a battle. Never. In 500 years of expansion, no enemy has ever defeated us. Well, Rick replied, you've never fought humans before. The Battle of Kepler Station ended with the complete defeat of the Skarn invasion fleet. Over 3/4 of their ships were destroyed or captured, and the survivors fled in panic, back to their own territory. For the Federation, it was the greatest victory in their history. But more importantly, it was proof that the galaxy's smallest species had become its most effective warriors. As Alex Thompson watched the retreating Skarn fleet on his screens, he knew that everything had changed. The galaxy had learned that strength came in many forms, and sometimes the smallest package contained the biggest surprise. The humans had taught the galaxy a new kind of warfare, and the lesson had been written in the wreckage of what was once the most feared fleet in known space. 2 days after the disaster at Kepler, Colonel Kate Adams stood in an abandoned training facility on Nexus Prime, watching her human soldiers practice moves that no alien had ever seen before. The facility had been built for Chronari warriors, making everything oversized, but Kate's team was making it work. Remember, we're not trying to overpower the enemy, Kate called out to her squad. We're trying to outsmart them. Use the shadows, use surprise, use their own size against them. Kate was a small woman with short red hair and sharp green eyes. She had been a Special Forces commander on Earth before joining the exploration program. Now, with the Federation facing its greatest crisis, her experience was suddenly very valuable. Ma'am, said Sergeant Mike Davis, a tough soldier who had served in many Earth conflicts, the alien brass wants to see our training session. Should we showed him everything? Kate thought about this. The Federation leaders were desperate for new ideas, but they still didn't really understand what humans could offer. Show them enough to get their attention. We'll save the advanced stuff for when they're ready to listen. The training session was interrupted by the arrival of General Korvath, one of the few Chronari commanders to survive the Kepler battle. The massive warrior entered the facility with several other Federation officers, all of them looking skeptical. So these are the human soldiers, General Korvath said, his voice echoing in the large space. They are even smaller than I expected. How can such tiny beings help us fight the Skarn? Watch and learn, General, Kate replied. She signaled to her team. Squad Alpha, demonstrate Urban Combat Scenario 7. The human soldiers moved with fluid precision. They used the facility's oversized equipment as cover, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. One moment they were visible, the next they had vanished in the shadows that the larger aliens hadn't even noticed. Where did they go? Asked Admiral Theros, the Vorthic commander, squinting to see the humans. His question was answered when the soldiers suddenly appeared behind the alien officers, having moved through spaces too small for the larger beings to see or use. The demonstration. Weapons in their hands were aimed at vital points on the aliens' bodies. Dead, announced Kate simply. All of you. In a real battle, this engagement would be over. General Korvath looked stunned. But where is the honor in this? Where is the fair combat? General, Kate said patiently, the Skarn aren't fighting with honor either. They're using tactics that you call dishonorable. The only way to beat them is to fight smarter than they do. The aliens watched more demonstrations, each one showing tactics they had never imagined. The humans used camouflage, blending into their surroundings until they were invisible. They coordinated attacks from multiple directions, confusing their targets. They used psychological warfare, making noise in one place while attacking from another. This is disturbing, Admiral Theros admitted. How do you learn to fight in such ways? Practice, Kate answered. And history. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've learned that survival often depends on being cleverer than your enemy, not stronger. Meanwhile, in another part of Nexus Prime, Dr. Steve Parker was presenting his research to the Federation Council. Steve was a military historian who had spent months studying galactic warfare. His findings were shocking to the alien leaders. The average galactic conflict lasts 3 days, Steve explained, pointing to charts that showed centuries of Federation. Military data. Battles are decided by which side has bigger ships and stronger warriors. There's no concept of long-term strategy. President Valdres leaned forward in his massive chair. Are you saying our methods are wrong, human? I'm saying they're incomplete, Steve replied carefully. Your methods work when both sides follow the same rules. But the Skarn have introduced new rules, and you need new methods to counter them. What do you suggest? Asked Counselor Thyric. Steve activated another display, showing Earth's military history. On our world, we fought wars that lasted years, even decades. We've learned about supply lines, intelligence gathering, and psychological operations. We know how to fight enemies who won't meet us in fair battle. The alien leaders studied the data with growing amazement. They saw records of human conflicts that involved complex strategies, deception, and tactics that seemed impossible to their way of thinking. Your species fought wars against themselves? President Valdres asked, his voice filled with confusion. Many wars, Steve confirmed. It was terrible, but it taught us lessons that might help you now. Back at the training facility, Lieutenant Emma Stone was demonstrating night combat techniques to a group of Federation officers. Emma was a quiet woman with dark hair who had specialized in stealth operations on Earth. Visibility is everything in combat, Emma explained as she moved through the darkened facility. If your enemy can't see you, you have already won half. The battle. The alien officers watched in amazement as Emma seemed to disappear entirely, only to reappear behind them moments later. Their advanced sensors could barely track her movement. How is this possible? Asked Captain Vex, a Zenthorian. Officer, our equipment should detect any movement. Your equipment is designed to track large objects, Emma replied. Small movements, careful positioning, and knowledge of sensor blind spots can make anyone invisible. But this is ... Captain Vex struggled for words. This is not how warriors behave. This is how survivors behave, Emma corrected. And right now, survival is what matters. News from the front lines continued to be bad. The Skarn had taken 5 more Federation systems, using the same hit-and-run tactics that had destroyed the Grand Fleet. Each victory made them bolder, and their attacks were becoming more aggressive. Colonel Adams received an urgent message from Captain Ryan Bell, who was leading reconnaissance missions near Skarn-controlled space. His small human ships were the only Federation vessels that could get close to the enemy without being detected. Kate, you need to see this, Ryan's message said. I've been observing Skarn operations, and they're not just using new tactics. They're learning. They're adapting their methods based on each engagement. Kate assembled her team to review Ryan's intelligence reports. The data showed that the Skarn were indeed evolving their tactics, but in ways that the Federation didn't understand. Look at this, said Sergeant Davis, pointing to the tactical displays. They're not just hitting military targets anymore. They're going after infrastructure, supply depots, communication networks. They're fighting a total war, Kate realized. They're not just trying to defeat Federation forces. They're trying to break down the entire system. This was a concept that the Federation had never encountered. Their wars were ritualistic affairs between military forces, with civilian populations remaining untouched. The idea that an enemy might target the entire society was foreign to them. We need to warn the Council, Kate said. If the Skarn continue this strategy, they can bring down the Federation without winning a single major battle. The emergency council session was unlike anything the Federation had ever seen. For the first time, Human advisors were given prominent roles in military planning. Kate, Steve, and other human experts presented their analysis of the Skarn threat. "They're not trying to conquer territory," Kate explained to the assembled alien leaders. "They're trying to destroy your ability to fight back. Every supply depot they hit, every communication relay they destroy, makes you weaker. What do you recommend?" asked General Korvath, his pride clearly damaged by having to ask advice from beings he had once considered pets. "Asymmetric warfare," Steve replied. "Use small units, hit their supply lines, disrupt their communications. Fight the kind of war they're not prepared for." "You mean fight like cowards?" President Valdres asked. "We mean fight to win," Kate said firmly. "Honor doesn't matter if you're dead. Pride doesn't matter if your people are enslaved." The debate continued for hours, but gradually the Federation leaders began to understand. They were facing an enemy that didn't care about their rules, their traditions, or their concepts of honorable combat. To survive, they would have to change everything about how they fought. "Very well," President Valdres finally announced. "We will try these human methods. Colonel Adams, you will train selected Federation personnel in your tactics. And Captain Bell," added General Korvath, "you will lead Joint Strike Forces using these new methods." Kate felt a mixture of satisfaction and worry. The Federation was finally ready to listen to human military expertise, but she knew the road ahead would be difficult. They were asking alien warriors to abandon thousands of years of military tradition and learn completely new ways of fighting. As the meeting ended, Kate noticed something important. The alien leaders were no longer looking down at the humans with amusement or pity. For the first time since first contact, they were looking at humans with respect. The galaxy's smallest species was about to teach its largest species that in warfare, size mattered less than intelligence. The lessons of human military history were about to be written across the stars, and the Skarn Empire was about to learn that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they ever imagined. The art of war was coming to the galaxy, and humanity was going to be its teacher. 3 weeks after the first Skarn attack, Captain Ryan Bell stood in the Federation's main war room, feeling completely out of place. The massive chamber was filled with the galaxy's greatest military minds, all of them towering over him like mountains. The holographic display in the center showed the locations of Skarn forces, red dots spreading across Federation space like a disease. "They have taken 3 more systems," announced General Korvath, his deep voice echoing through the room. "The Skarn fleets move faster than we expected. They do not stop to claim territory properly." Admiral Theros, a Vorthic commander, shook his massive head. "Their behavior makes no sense. They attack our defense stations and then move on without establishing control. What kind of conquest is this?" Ryan raised his hand, knowing he looked ridiculous among these giants. "General, with respect, I think they're using hit-and-run tactics. They're not trying to hold territory yet. They're weakening your defenses before the main assault." The room fell silent. Several of the larger officers looked down at Ryan with expressions that mixed amusement with annoyance. "Little human," General Korvath said slowly, "warfare is simple. You find the enemy, you fight the enemy, you defeat the enemy. These Skarn are simply running from honest battle." "But what if running is part of their strategy?" Ryan persisted. "What if they're trying to spread your forces thin?" Trade Minister Vex, the massive Xenthorian, made a rumbling sound that might have been laughter. "Humans think too much. The Skarn are cowards. When they face our full strength, they will surrender like all others." Ryan wanted to argue, but he knew it was useless. These beings had never faced an enemy that didn't follow their rules of honorable combat. They couldn't understand tactics that went beyond simple displays of strength. Meanwhile, on the outer edges of Federation space, the Skarn Empire was proving Ryan's fears correct. Commander Zeph, a 9-foot-tall warrior with gray skin and burning red eyes, stood on the bridge of his flagship as it approached another Federation outpost. "Target their command center first," Zeph ordered his crew. then destroy their communication arrays. We want them confused and blind. The attack lasted only minutes. The Federation defenders, a mix of Chronari and Vorthic forces, tried to form their traditional battle lines. But the Skarn ships came from multiple directions, striking hard and fast before disappearing into the asteroid fields. Sir, the Federation fleet is requesting honorable single combat, reported a Skarn officer. Zeth laughed, a harsh sound that filled the bridge. Honorable combat? These fools still don't understand. Send the message to High Command. Another Federation outpost falls. Their military doctrine is even more primitive than we hoped. Back on Nexus Prime, the Federation Council was in emergency session. The chamber was filled with the sounds of angry voices as species representatives argued about the proper response to the Skarn threat. We must show them our strength, declared President Valdris, a Chronari leader whose voice could shatter glass. Deploy the Grand Fleet. Let them see the full might of the Federation. Ambassador Danwright sat in his elevated chair, watching the debate with growing concern. The Federation's leaders were treating this like every other conflict they had faced, but the Skarn were different. They didn't care about displays of strength or honorable combat. President Valdris, Dan said, standing up. Perhaps we should. Consider that the Skarn might not respond to traditional shows of force. What would you suggest, little ambassador? Valdris asked, his tone making it clear he expected nothing useful. Intelligence gathering, Dan replied. We need to understand their tactics, their goals, their weaknesses. We need to study how they fight before we engage them. Counselor Thyric, the Vorthic official who had become Gan's main contact, spoke up. The human makes a point. Perhaps we should learn more about these Skarn before we act. But General Corvass slammed his massive fist on the table. There is nothing to learn. They are invaders. We are defenders. We fight, we win, they surrender. This is the way of all warfare. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The Federation would respond with overwhelming force, just as they always had. The Grand Fleet would assemble at the Kepler system, where the Skarn were expected to make their next move. Ryan Bell found himself assigned to the Federation flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Victory. The ship was a marvel of engineering, 3 miles long and bristling with weapons. But as Ryan walked through its corridors, he noticed something troubling. Captain Torres, he said to the ship's human communications officer, have you seen the tactical systems? Maria Torres, a young woman who had joined the exploration program fresh from Earth's Naval Academy, nodded grimly. It's all about frontal assault. Their computers can't even process the idea of flanking maneuvers. What about their intelligence? Systems? Ryan asked. They gather information about enemy ship classes and weapon types, Maria replied. But they don't seem to care about things like supply lines, command structures, or psychological warfare. Ryan shook his head. They're going to get slaughtered, and they don't even know it. The Federation Grand Fleet was indeed impressive. Over 300 ships assembled at Kepler, representing the combined military might of dozens of species. The Chronari battlecruisers formed the center, their massive hulls bristling with weapons. Vorthic destroyers provided support, while Zenthorian cargo vessels carried supplies and reinforcements. Admiral Corvex, the supreme commander of the Federation forces, addressed the fleet from his flagship. Today, we show the galaxy that the Federation cannot be threatened. We will meet the Skarn in honorable battle and remind them that size and strength always triumph over cowardice and deception. The human ships were assigned to the rear of the formation, their small size making them unsuitable for the main battle. Ryan commanded a flotilla of 12 vessels, each one tiny compared to the alien dreadnoughts around them. This is Admiral Corvex to all ships, came the announcement. Skarn forces have been detected approaching the system. All vessels will maintain formation and prepare for glorious battle. Ryan watched his sensors as the Skarn fleet appeared. They were outnumbered 3-1, but something about their formation worried him. Instead of massing for a direct attack, they were spreading out, using the system's gas giant and its moons for cover. "Admiral," Ryan called over the communications channel, "the Skarn are not forming a battle line. They're taking positions around the gas giant." "Noted, Captain Bell," Admiral Korvex replied dismissively. "They are simply afraid. When they see our strength, they will come forward to fight properly." But the Skarn had no intention of fighting properly. As the Federation fleet moved forward in its traditional formation, Skarn forces struck from multiple directions. Small, fast ships emerged from behind the gas giant's moons, launching attacks on the Federation's flanks and rear. "They're targeting our command ships," someone shouted over the communications channel. "And our supply vessels," added another voice. The Federation fleet, designed for frontal combat, found itself unable to respond effectively to attacks from multiple directions. The massive ships were too slow to turn and faced the fast-moving Skarn vessels, and their weapons were designed for long-range battles against similarly large targets. "All ships maintain formation," Admiral Korvex ordered. "Do not break ranks." But the Skarn were not interested in a fair fight. They used the gas giant's gravity well to slingshot their ships to incredible speeds, making hit-and-run attacks that the Federation forces couldn't counter. Ryan watched in horror as a Skarn strike force targeted the Federation's flagship. The small enemy vessels swarmed around the massive dreadnought like angry insects, their weapons finding weak points in the ship's armor. "Captain Bell," came Admiral Korvex's voice, now strained with desperation, "can your ships assist the flagship?" Ryan looked at his small flotilla. Their weapons were no match for the Skarn vessels, but they were faster and more maneuverable than the Federation's main ships. "We'll do what we can, Admiral." The human ships broke formation and raced toward the embattled flagship. Ryan watched as his pilots, trained in Earth's more flexible military doctrine, began to adapt to the chaotic battle. "Don't try to match their firepower," Ryan ordered his captains. "Use your speed. Hit them from unexpected angles. Make them fight the way we fight." For a brief moment, the human intervention seemed to help. The small Federation ships used tactics that confused the Skarn, striking from directions they didn't expect. But there were too few human vessels to make a real difference. The battle ended in disaster for the Federation. Admiral Korvex was killed when his flagship was destroyed, and over half the Federation fleet was lost. The Skarn forces withdrew, having achieved their goal of crippling the Federation's main military force. Ryan's ship was among the survivors, limping back to Nexus Prime with the terrible news. As he stood on his bridge, looking at the wreckage of what had been the galaxy's most powerful fleet, he realized that everything was about to change. The Federation had always won through strength and size. But the Skarn had shown that there were other ways to fight, other ways to win. And somewhere in the galaxy, the Skarn commanders were planning their